The twin suns cast their relentless glare across an endless sea of dunes as Nera trudged forward, one painful step after another. Her once pristine golden attire, woven from the sacred forests of her homeworld, now hung in tatters around her slender blue form. 3 days in the portal-wrecked wastes had stripped away any semblance of dignity she once possessed. All that remained was the will to survive. She clutched her ancestral staff closer, drawing comfort from its familiar weight. The crescent tip hummed faintly, with psychic resonance responding to her desperation. It was all she had left of her people, the Alari. The staff represented thousands of years of telepathic tradition, craftsmanship, and knowledge that would die with her if she failed to find shelter soon. The horizon shimmered with heat, mirages deceiving her parched mind, with false promises of water and salvation. Nera narrowed her eyes against the blinding light, focusing on placing one foot before the other. Each step sent pain shooting through her dehydrated body. Her throat felt like the very desert she crossed, cracked, barren, and devoid of life. "I will not be the end," she whispered, her voice barely audible even to herself. The thought sustained her when her body threatened to surrender. The Kravak had come without warning, their disintegration weapons, reducing the crystal spires of her world to dust. She had watched helpless as the last of her kind were systematically erased from existence. Only her position in the portal chamber had saved her, allowing a desperate escape as the floor beneath her feet had begun to dissolve. Now she alone carried the memory of her people, the last Alari telepath in a galaxy that had forgotten they ever existed. In the distance, a dark speck disrupted the monotonous landscape. Nera squinted, uncertain if her mind was conjuring another mirage. The shape remained fixed, a rock formation perhaps, or the ruins of some ancient structure. Either way, it promised shelter from the merciless suns beating down upon her azure skin. She adjusted her course, focusing on the distant landmark. A slight breeze stirred the sand around her feet, unusual in the typically still heat of midday. Nera glanced over her shoulder and froze. On the horizon behind her, a massive wall of swirling sand rose like a tidal wave, stretching from ground to sky. The sandstorm approached with unnatural speed, already swallowing the dunes she had crossed hours ago. Her heart thundered in her chest as primal fear took hold. There was no time for caution. Nera broke into a desperate sprint toward the dark outcropping. The crescent tip of her staff glowed brighter as it responded to her surge of adrenaline, casting a golden light over the sand before her. Her lungs burned with each gasping breath, the thin, hot air insufficient for her body's sudden demands. The storm gained ground with terrifying speed. Grains of sand began to sting her exposed skin, harbingers of the maelstrom to come. The outcropping grew larger, a jagged rock formation rising from the desert floor, like a sentinel. As she neared, Nera spotted what appeared to be an opening, a cave, or crevice cutting into the stone. The roar of the storm grew deafening. Sand filled her mouth, her nose, her eyes. Visibility dropped to nothing as the world vanished in a screaming haze of particles. Nera stumbled, fell to her knees, then forced herself upright, using her staff for support. She was close, so close. The cave entrance materialized before her like a miracle, a dark void in the sand-blasted rock. With her last reserves of strength, Nera threw herself forward into the darkness. She crashed onto a hard stone floor, tumbling painfully beyond the reach of the howling storm. For several moments, she simply lay there gasping, her body trembling with exhaustion. Her staff rolled from her grasp, the golden glow dimming as her immediate danger passed. When her breathing finally steadied, Nera pushed herself to a sitting position and surveyed her sanctuary. The cave extended deeper than she had first assumed, its walls unnaturally smooth. As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, she noticed something that sent a cold shiver through her body despite the heat. Deeper within the cave, a faint flicker of light danced on the stone walls. Firelight, or something very similar. Nera retrieved her staff, her fingers tightening around its familiar contours. She wasn't alone in this shelter. Slowly, she rose to her feet, ignoring the protest of her aching muscles. Survival demanded caution, but also knowledge. If danger awaited deeper in the cave, better to confront it on her terms than be discovered weakened and unprepared. Each step forward caused the light to grow stronger. A corridor stretched before her, definitely artificial in its construction. This was no natural formation, but a structure built by intelligent hands. The walls bore faded inscriptions in a script she didn't recognize, yet something about it tugged at her memory. The corridor widened into a chamber, where the source of the light became clear. A small heating unit sat in the center of the room, its artificial flame casting dancing shadows on the walls. Beside it, crouched a figure wrapped in a dusty cloak, facing away from her. Nera readied her staff, channeling a small measure of psychic energy into its tip. The crescent glowed brighter, illuminating the chamber fully. The cloaked figure spun around, revealing a surprisingly human face. Tan skin, dark eyes, wide with shock, a short beard covering a strong jaw. He scrambled backward, reaching for what appeared to be a weapon at his side. "Stop," he commanded in a language that Nera recognized from ancient records. Human speech. The impossible made flesh before her. "You cannot be," Nera whispered in the same tongue, her facility with languages one of the gifts of her telepathic heritage. "Humans are extinct, gone for millennia." The man's weapon remained half-drawn, as confusion replaced fear in his expression. "And you look like an Alari, but they were wiped out months ago." He studied her blue skin and the gold-threaded remnants of her garments. "Yet, here you stand." "I am Nera," she said, lowering her staff slightly, but keeping it between them. "Last survivor of the 7th House of Alari telepaths." "Daniel," the man replied after a hesitation. "Last guardian of Human Outpost 7. He gestured around them. "Welcome to what's left of humanity's final monitoring station, on the edge of what you'd call the Whispering Wastes." Nera's mind reeled with the implications. Humans, not legends or ghosts, but living beings who had somehow survived their supposed extinction. The histories spoke of them as warriors and explorers who had vanished from the galactic stage eons ago, presumed destroyed by their own technological hubris. "If you're truly Alari," Daniel continued, his voice heavy with doubt, "prove it." Nera raised her crescent staff. With careful concentration, she projected a simple thought, a memory of the desert sunrise she had witnessed that morning, the twin suns breaking over the dunes in spectacular golden light. Daniel's eyes widened as the mental image flickered in his consciousness. "True telepathy," he breathed. "So the legends about your people were real. As were the stories of humanity's fall apparently exaggerated," Nera countered. She lowered herself slowly to sit across from him, her exhaustion returning now that immediate danger had passed. "The Kravak destroyed my world 3 days ago. I escaped through our last functional portal. I thought I was the only one to survive." Daniel's expression darkened. "The Kravak have returned after all this time." He passed a hand over his face, suddenly looking much older. "Then the cycle begins again." "What cycle?" Nera asked. "The cycle of extinction." Daniel gestured for her to follow him deeper into the complex. "Come. You need water, and this conversation requires context you don't have." Nera followed her curiosity temporarily, overriding caution. The corridor led to a larger chamber, filled with technology consoles, screens, and equipment, bearing the distinctive aesthetic she recognized from artifacts and ruins attributed to human design. Much of it was dark or clearly non-functional, but several screens glowed with data streams and monitoring systems. Daniel retrieved a container of water from a recessed compartment and offered it to her. "The Kravak nearly wiped out humanity 5 centuries ago," he explained, as Nera drank gratefully. "We weren't completely destroyed as the galaxy believes, but reduced to a handful of survivors who went into hiding." "Why hide your existence?" Nera asked, lowering the water container. "Strategy," Daniel said simply. "The Kravak hunt any species they perceive as a threat to their dominance. When they believe a race is completely eradicated, they move on to the next target. By allowing the galaxy to think humans were extinct, we gained time to rebuild in secret. Nera considered this as she glanced around the monitoring station. Then there are more of you, A colony. Daniel nodded. New Terra. Hidden in a system surrounded by radiation fields that mask its signatures. There are perhaps 20,000 of us now rebuilding what we lost. He moved to one of the consoles, calling up a stellar map. This outpost is one of 12 established to monitor Kravak movements and warn our colony if they ever return to this sector. And now they have, Nera said grimly. My world was likely just the beginning. Tell me what happened, Daniel requested, settling into a chair that had seen better days. Every detail could matter. Nera recounted the attack, how the Kravak ships had appeared, without warning how their weapons had systematically targeted population centers' communication arrays, and finally, the planetary defense systems. The efficiency of the slaughter had been terrifying in its precision. As she spoke, Nera approached one of the consoles, drawn by a pattern of light that pulsed in rhythm with her staff. Without thinking, she placed the crescent tip against the interface panel. A brilliant flash of golden energy surged between staff and console. Suddenly, previously dark sections of the outpost hummed to life screens, illuminating with data. Daniel jumped to his feet. What did you do? I don't know, Nera admitted, equally startled. My staff? It seems compatible with your technology somehow. Daniel stared at the newly activated system's wonder, replacing alarm. Incredible. There were always theories about Alari psychic technology, having origins connected to early human psionic research, but this... He gestured at the interface. This suggests far more than theoretical connections. Before Nera could respond, an alarm blared from the primary console. Daniel rushed to it, his expression hardening as he read the incoming data. Kravak scout ship, he announced, fingers flying across the controls. Entering orbit. They must have followed your portal signature. Fear and rage warred within Nera's chest. They've come to confirm their kill. Daniel turned to her, his face set with grim determination. This outpost has defenses, but they've degraded over time. With your staff's interface boost, however... He left the implication hanging. We fight, Nera finished for him, gripping her ancestral weapon tighter. I will not hide while they hunt for me. Not hide. Daniel agreed, activating a series of controls that caused compartments in the walls to slide open, revealing weapons. Ambush. Over the next hour, they prepared. Daniel explained the outpost's defensive capabilities, automated turrets, sensor masking, and a short-range ion disruptor that could disable a small ship's systems temporarily. Nera, in turn, demonstrated how her staff could channel psychic energy into destructive pulses, capable of shorting electronics or causing neurological disruption to organic beings. The plan they formed was simple but relied on precise timing. The Kravak would detect the energy signatures from the outpost and investigate. When they entered the narrow canyon leading to the cave entrance, Daniel would trigger a localized sandstorm using the outpost's weather modification system, a remnant of terraforming technology. While the Kravak scouts were disoriented, Nera would use her telepathic abilities to confuse them further, projecting false sensor readings into their minds. Then, the outpost's defense turrets coupled with Daniel's marksman skills would eliminate the threat. As they finalized their preparations, a strange quiet fell between them. Two survivors of supposedly extinct races, united by circumstance and common enemy. Why did you not flee when the storm came? Nera asked suddenly. You must have detected it. Daniel's expression softened slightly. I saw something moving across the desert earlier. Something bipedal carrying a staff. I thought it might be a hallucination at first. Isolation plays tricks on the mind after months alone. But I activated the secondary entrance just in case. He shrugged. I've been the only living soul on this world for 3 years. Even a stranger seemed preferable to another day of solitude. Nera felt an unexpected surge of empathy. 3 years alone would break many minds. It nearly broke mine, Daniel admitted. The outpost rotation was supposed to be 6 months, But after my relief team missed their arrival date and communications with New Terra became increasingly sporadic, I realized something had gone wrong. The standing orders are clear, though never abandon an outpost until officially relieved. Your dedication is admirable, Nera said, but foolish if it meant death. A hint of a smile touched Daniel's lips. Says the woman who crossed a desert wasteland alone. Before Nera could respond, proximity alarms sounded throughout the complex. Daniel straightened, all traces of humor vanishing from his face. They're coming. 6 life signs, heavy weapons configuration based on their movement patterns. They moved to their positions, Daniel at the defense control station, Nera near the main corridor, where her psychic abilities would have maximum effect on the approaching scouts. The minutes stretched as they waited, tension building with each passing moment. The first indication of the Kravak arrival was a subtle vibration through the stone floor. Then came the chittering sound of their communication, a high-pitched series of clicks that raised the hair on Nera's neck. She had heard those sounds as her world burned. Through the outpost's surveillance system, they watched as 6 armored figures approached the cave entrance. The Kravak were insectoid in appearance with segmented exoskeletons and multiple limbs that moved with unsettling precision. Each carried disintegration rifles capable of reducing matter to its component atoms. Now, Daniel whispered into his communicator. Nera closed her eyes, channeling her psychic energy through her staff. She projected a cascade of false sensory data heat signatures, appearing and disappearing movement, where there was none, silent whispers that played on primal fears. Simultaneously, Daniel activated the weather system, sending a focused wall of sand roaring through the canyon. The Kravak scouts scattered in momentary confusion, their precise formation breaking apart. It was all the advantage they needed. The hidden defense turrets emerged from the rock and opened fire with pinpoint accuracy. 2 Kravak fell immediately, their armor pierced by concentrated energy beams. The remaining 4 regrouped with alarming speed, taking cover behind rock formations. 1 fired its disintegration rifle at a turret, the weapon dissolving into dust instantly. They're adapting faster than expected, Daniel warned, fingers dancing across the control panel. Second wave now. A series of explosions rocked the canyon walls, sending cascades of stone down upon the Kravak position. Another scout disappeared beneath the falling rocks, but the 3 survivors pushed forward with single-minded determination. Nera felt their alien minds brush against her consciousness, cold, precise, and utterly without mercy. They were killers, without remorse, driven by xenophobic conviction that their species alone deserved dominance. She pushed back with a concentrated psychic pulse that disrupted their neural patterns, temporarily causing one to fire wildly and hit one of its companions. 2 left, Daniel announced, grabbing a rifle and moving toward the corridor. They're almost at the main entrance. Nera joined him, her staff pulsing with accumulated energy. Together. As the first Kravak scout breached the entrance, Daniel fired a series of precise shots that impacted its armor joints. The creature staggered, but continued forward, raising its disintegration rifle. Before it could fire, Nera released the stored energy from her staff, the golden pulse striking the scout directly in its faceted eyes. The creature convulsed, its nervous system overloaded, and collapsed in a heap of twitching limbs. The final scout charged forward with unexpected speed, knocking Daniel aside with a powerful sweep of its front limbs. Nera barely dodged its attack, feeling the wind of its passage as chitin-covered appendages missed her by centimeters. She fell back, trying to recharge her staff, but the scout was too quick. It loomed over her, weapon aimed at her chest. A single shot rang out. The Kravak scout froze, then toppled sideways. Behind it stood Daniel, his rifle raised, smoke still curling from its barrel. "Are you hurt?" he asked, crossing to help Nera to her feet. "No," she replied, though her heart raced with the nearness of death. "Thank you." Their brief moment of relief was shattered by new alarms. Daniel rushed back to the monitoring station, cursing under his breath as he read the incoming data. "The scout ship is sending automated telemetry back to their main fleet," he reported grimly. "They now know this position and that their scouts were eliminated. "How much time do we have?" Nera asked. "Hours, maybe less." Daniel began shutting down systems, activating what appeared to be emergency protocols. "The main fleet will come to investigate a lost scout ship, especially one that was tracking an Alari survivor." "Then we run," Nera said simply. Daniel nodded, pulling up a schematic of the outpost. "There's a maintenance tunnel leading to a concealed hangar. The Pathfinder is there, a small starship kept for emergency evacuations. If we can reach it before the fleet arrives, we might escape." "And go where?" Nera asked. "New Terra," Daniel replied without hesitation. "They need to be warned about the Kravak return. And you." He met her gaze directly. "You're the last of your kind. My people would grant you sanctuary for that alone." Nera felt a complex surge of emotions. Hope that she might find safety, gratitude for his offer, and something else she couldn't quite name. In the dim light of the failing outpost, Daniel's eyes held a warmth that seemed to reach past her defenses, touching something she had thought died with her world. "We should move quickly," she said, breaking their gaze. "What do you need to do before we leave?" "Initiate the self-destruct sequence," Daniel said grimly. "Standard protocol if an outpost is compromised. We can't let the Kravak get their appendages on our technology or data." As Daniel worked to set the destruction timer and gather essential supplies, Nera placed her staff against the main console one final time. The information flowing between her ancestral weapon and the human technology fascinated her like two long separated dialects of the same language reconnecting after millennia apart. A particular data strand caught her attention: astronomical coordinates, embedded in both her staff's psychic matrix and the outpost's deepest archives. The correlation was too precise to be coincidence. "Daniel," she called, "I'm seeing something strange in the data exchange. Coordinates to a system I don't recognize." He joined her, studying the display. "Those are in the veiled sectors, a region considered impassable due to gravitational anomalies." His brow furrowed. "Why would both your staff and our oldest archives share these specific coordinates?" "Another mystery we lack time to solve," Nera said, withdrawing her staff as the final evacuation alert sounded. They gathered what supplies they could carry and entered the maintenance tunnel, a narrow passage that wound deep into the rock beneath the outpost. The air grew cooler as they descended, the distant howl of the Sandstorm, above replaced by eerie silence. Daniel consulted a small handheld navigator. "The hangar is half a kilometer ahead. The Pathfinder should be fully fueled. Standard protocol keeps emergency vessels ready for immediate departure." As they hurried through the dimly lit tunnel, Nera felt a growing sense of unease. "Something's wrong," she whispered, her telepathic senses tingling with warning. Daniel slowed, raising his weapon. "What do you sense?" "Life forms ahead," she replied, concentrating. "Cold mines, waiting." Daniel cursed softly. "The two Kravak scouts we didn't account for. They must have been sent to secure the perimeter and found the hangar." He checked his weapon's charge. "We can't go back. The outpost is set to destruct in 20 minutes. "Then we face them," Nera said, her staff glowing with renewed energy. "But not without advantage." She closed her eyes, extending her telepathic awareness forward. "I can mask our approach project false sensory data to confuse them." "Like a psychic smokescreen?" Daniel asked. "Something like that," Nera confirmed. "Follow close behind me and be ready to fire the moment the deception breaks." They proceeded more cautiously, Nera concentrating intensely on maintaining the telepathic illusion. Sweat beaded on her blue skin as she projected images of an empty corridor ahead to the waiting Kravak. It was delicate work. The insectoid minds were highly ordered and quick to recognize patterns of deception. The tunnel widened into a small antechamber that preceded the main hangar. Through the partially open doorway, Nera could see the sleek form of the Pathfinder starship waiting on its launch pad. Between them and freedom stood two Kravak scouts' weapons, ready, their faceted eyes scanning methodically. "Now," Nera whispered, releasing a focused pulse of psychic energy that momentarily overwhelmed the scout's sensory systems. Daniel moved with practiced efficiency, firing two precise shots that struck the first scout's weapon, causing it to overload and explode. The blast threw both Kravak off balance, giving Nera and Daniel the opening they needed to dash into the hangar. The second scout recovered quickly, firing a disintegration beam that narrowly missed Daniel, dissolving a section of wall into dust. Nera responded with another psychic assault, but this time, the Kravak was prepared, its mind shielded against her intrusion. "Get to the ship," Daniel shouted, taking cover behind a storage container. "I'll hold them off." "Not without you," Nera countered, joining him in cover, as disintegration beams struck dangerously close. Daniel pointed to a control panel near their position. "That activates the hangar's internal defense turrets. They're old, but should still function. If you can reach it." A massive explosion from the tunnel interrupted him. The outpost's self-destruct sequence had begun early, triggered by the Kravak attack. The hangar trembled, equipment falling from shelves and ceiling panels crashing down. In the chaos, Nera made her decision. Channeling all her remaining psychic energy into her staff, she rose from cover and released the accumulated power in a blinding flash of golden light. The pulse struck both Kravaks, simultaneously shorting their armor systems and sending them crashing to the floor. "The turrets," she called to Daniel, maintaining her focus on keeping the scouts immobilized. Daniel raced to the control panel, activating the ancient defense system. From recessed compartments in the hangar ceiling, automated weapons deployed and opened fire on the prone Kravak, ensuring they wouldn't rise again. 10 minutes until complete structural collapse. An automated voice announced calmly over the hangar speakers. "Please evacuate immediately." They sprinted for the Pathfinder. Daniel pressed his palm against the entry scanner, and the ship's hatch slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the vessel was compact but efficiently designed, clearly built for speed and stealth rather than comfort. Daniel took the pilot's seat, fingers dancing across the activation sequence. "It's been a while since I flew one of these," he admitted, as the engines hummed to life. "Simulator training only gets you so far." Nera strapped herself into the co-pilot seat, watching as status indicators flashed from red to green across the control panels. Better a novice pilot than no escape at all. The hangar began to disintegrate around them as the self-destruct sequence reached its final stages. Sections of ceiling collapsed, and support beams twisted under structural strain. The massive hangar doors, designed to slide open horizontally, jammed halfway through their opening sequence. "We'll never clear those doors," Nera said, pointing at the partial opening. Daniel smiled grimly. "Watch me." He engaged the Pathfinder's weapon system, a feature Nera hadn't expected on what was supposedly an evacuation vessel. A concentrated energy beam lanced from the ship's forward array, blasting the remains of the hangar doors from their tracks. "Evacuation protocols include all contingencies," Daniel explained, noting her surprise, "including fighting your way out if necessary." The Pathfinder shot forward, threading the needle between the broken hangar doors, just as the final countdown reached 0. Behind them, the entire outpost imploded in a spectacular cascade of energy, collapsing in on itself to leave nothing but fused glass and dust. They accelerated hard into the atmosphere, the ship's stabilizers struggling to compensate for their steep ascent angle. Through the view screen, the desert world fell away beneath them, the massive sandstorm now visible as a continent-spanning event rather than the localized phenomenon Nera had encountered. "Made it," Daniel breathed, as they broke free of the planet's gravity well. His relief was short-lived. The long-range sensors chimed a warning displaying multiple incoming signatures. Kravak fleet earlier than expected. Nera studied the tactical display. "They'll intercept us before we can make a hyperspace jump." Daniel's hands flew over the controls, diverting power to engines and shields. The Pathfinder has stealth capabilities, but activating them requires dropping shields temporarily. It's a risk. "One we must take," Nera agreed, bracing herself as Daniel executed a series of evasive maneuvers to buy them precious seconds. The ship shuddered as systems reconfigured shields, dropping momentarily as stealth protocols engaged. For 3 terrifying heartbeats, they were completely vulnerable. Then, the stealth field stabilized, rendering them virtually invisible to conventional sensors. "Holding position," Daniel whispered, though there was no need for silence. "Let's see if it worked." They watched tensely as the Kravak fleet approached the remains of the outpost. 7 warships each, bristling with weapons capable of reducing planets to rubble, moved into standard search formation. Scanner beams swept the area, passing over the Pathfinder without registering its presence. "They're focusing on the debris field," Nera observed. "Looking for survivors or data cores." "Ah, standard Kravak thoroughness," Daniel agreed. "They won't leave until they've confirmed no information remains to be gathered." For nearly an hour, they maintained their position systems powered to minimum levels to avoid detection. The Kravak methodically excavated the collapsed outpost, recovering the bodies of their fallen scouts and analyzing the destruction pattern. Finally, the fleet regrouped and prepared to depart. Nera allowed herself to relax slightly, but Daniel's expression remained tense as he monitored communications. "Something's wrong," he said, adjusting the receiver. "They're transmitting new orders to their fleet." The translation matrix converted the Kravak communication signals to text on their screen. Daniel read aloud, "Outpost destruction confirmed. Human technology signatures identified. Adjust primary target from Sector 7 to coordinates 347289. He stopped, his face draining of color. "What is it?" Nera asked, alarmed by his reaction. "Those are the coordinates for New Terra," Daniel whispered. "They've found the colony. They're redirecting their entire fleet there." The implications hit Nera like a physical blow. "How the colony was hidden, you said?" Daniel's hands clenched into fists. "The outpost must have been transmitting regular updates to New Terra. When the Kravak analyzed the communication patterns in the debris," he shook his head, "it doesn't matter how. What matters is that 20,000 humans are about to face the same fate as your people." "We have to warn them," Nera said. "Even at maximum speed, we'd arrive after the Kravak fleet." Daniel stared at the departing warships, helplessness and rage battling in his expression. "They're completely unprepared for an attack of this magnitude." Nera placed her hand on her staff, feeling the lingering connection it had established with the outpost technology. The strange coordinates they had discovered earlier surfaced in her mind. "Perhaps there is another way," she said slowly. "The coordinates in both your archives and my staff. What if they weren't random? What if they point to something that could help?" Daniel looked at her skeptically. "The veiled sectors are treacherous to navigate. We'd be risking our lives on what might be nothing more than a data correlation." "Do we have a better option?" Nera challenged. "My people are gone. Yours soon will be, unless we find some advantage against the Kravak." After a moment of internal struggle, Daniel nodded decisively. "Setting course for the veiled sectors. We can make a brief hyperspace jump to clear the Kravak sensor range, then transmit a warning to New Terra before proceeding." The Pathfinder hummed as Daniel programmed the coordinates. Stars blurred around them as they made their initial jump, putting distance between themselves and the Kravak fleet. Once safely beyond detection range, Daniel opened a secure communication channel to New Terra. "Outpost 7 to New Terra, Command Emergency Protocol, 793. Kravak fleet inbound to your position. Estimated arrival, 48 hours. Full invasion force. Prepare all defenses. Repeating." A response came almost immediately, the voice of an older woman filled with authority, despite the static interference. "Daniel, is that you? We thought Outpost 7 was lost months ago when communications failed." "Admiral Reeves," Daniel replied, relief evident in his voice. "Communications were compromised, but I maintained my post. The situation is critical." "We're receiving your telemetry," Admiral Reeves interrupted. "Kravak fleet movement confirmed by our long-range arrays. Defense protocols already initiating. Where are you now? Daniel hesitated, glancing at Nera. I have an Alari survivor with me. We're pursuing a potential weapon or advantage in the veiled sectors. Silence stretched for several seconds before the Admiral responded. An Alari alive. I thought they were extinct during the first wave. Her voice hardened. Explain this detour when our colony faces extinction. Nera leaned forward, addressing the Admiral directly. I am Nera Last of the 7th House of Alari Telepaths. My staff contains ancestral knowledge that correlates with human archives, pointing to a specific location in the veiled sectors. I believe our ancestors left something there, something both our races were meant to find if the Kravak ever returned. Another long pause. Your vessel's scanners confirm Alari life signs, Admiral Reeves finally said. Extraordinary. Very well, pursue this lead. We'll hold the line as long as possible. But understand this, if you find nothing of use, you'll have abandoned humanity's last stand for a futile errand. Understood, Admiral, Daniel responded grimly. We'll transmit any findings immediately. Good hunting, Admiral Reeves said, before terminating the connection. Daniel set the final coordinates for the veiled sectors, and the Pathfinder leapt into hyperspace once more. In the confined space of the cockpit, a heavy silence fell between them, each lost in their own thoughts. She's right to be skeptical, Daniel finally said. We're betting everything on coordinates that might lead nowhere. Nera studied her staff, the crescent tip pulsing softly with inner light. When I interfaced with your outpost systems, there was recognition like reuniting two halves of a whole. Whatever awaits us at these coordinates, I believe it was placed there deliberately by both our ancestors. Daniel checked their trajectory, making minor adjustments. The veiled sectors earned their name from the gravitational distortions that make navigation nearly impossible. Most ships that enter never return. Yet these coordinates include gravitational correction algorithms, Nera pointed out, referring to the data they had extracted. As if whoever left them wanted to ensure we could find our way. Hours passed as they traveled deeper into the uncharted regions. The Pathfinder systems struggled against increasing gravitational interference alarms, occasionally sounding as they navigated particularly turbulent areas. Nera placed her staff against the navigation console, allowing its stored patterns to interface with the ship's computers. The connection stabilized their course, confirming her suspicion that the staff had been designed for this very purpose. We're approaching the coordinates, Daniel announced, fatigue evident in his voice after hours of intensive piloting. Dropping out of hyperspace in 3, 2, 1. The starscape reappeared as they returned to normal space. Before them floated a seemingly barren world, a small, rocky planet, with no apparent atmosphere or signs of habitation. Its surface was pockmarked with craters and deep fissures, evidence of ancient cataclysms. There's nothing here, Daniel said, disappointment clear in his tone. Just another dead world. Nera stood moving closer to the view screen. Scan for energy signatures, particularly on frequencies compatible with my staff's emissions. Daniel complied, adjusting the sensors. For several moments, nothing happened. Then a single point on the planet's surface lit up on their display, a faint but distinctive energy reading that pulsed in perfect rhythm with Nera's staff. There, she said, pointing to the illuminated location. Something's responding to us. Daniel brought the Pathfinder into orbit around the dead world, conducting more detailed scans of the anomalous area. I'm detecting an artificial structure beneath the surface, heavily shielded, which is why it didn't appear on initial scans. There's a landing zone nearby that looks artificial, though long abandoned. Take us down, Nera urged. Whatever's there has been waiting for us for a very long time. The descent through the minimal atmosphere was smoother than expected, as if unseen forces guided their approach. The Pathfinder settled onto a flat expanse of stone that showed faint, geometric patterns, clearly constructed rather than natural. They donned environmental suits, the planet's lack of atmosphere necessitating protection. As they stepped out onto the surface, a profound silence enveloped them, the absolute stillness of a world devoid of life for millennia. Nera's staff glowed brighter as she moved toward a particular section of the rock face. The crescent tip pulsed rhythmically, each flash illuminating barely visible inscriptions carved into the stone. The writing combined elements of ancient human script and Alari symbolic language in a synthesis that should have been impossible given the supposed historical separation of their species. These inscriptions, Daniel said, wonder evident even through his suit's communication system. They're at least 5,000 years old, predating the first recorded Kravak expansion. Our peoples knew each other then. More than knew, Nera corrected, studying the symbols. Collaborated, allied, perhaps even what Daniel prompted when she fell silent. We're one, Nera finished quietly. These symbols suggest a shared origin, that humans and Alari might once have been a single species that diverged either naturally or through deliberate genetic manipulation. Before Daniel could respond, Nera placed her staff against a circular depression in the rock face. The stone responded immediately, the circle pulsing with golden light that spread outward along invisible seams. With a deep rumbling, a section of the rock face slid aside, revealing a stairway descending into darkness. After you, Daniel said, adjusting the light on his environmental suit. They descended the ancient stairway, the stone steps worn smooth by time, yet still structurally sound. The air pressure gradually increased around them as they went deeper, until Daniel's suit sensors indicated a breathable atmosphere was present. The complex is maintaining atmosphere after all this time, he said cautiously, removing his helmet. Remarkable engineering. Nera followed suit, her staff providing illumination as they continued downward. The stairway opened into a vast chamber that stole their breath away. The walls were covered in the same hybrid script, but far more extensive and preserved in pristine condition. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, upon which rested an artifact, unlike anything either had seen before. It resembled a spear in its basic configuration, but composed of both metallic components and what appeared to be crystalline matrices, similar to those in Nera's staff. The entire artifact hummed with dormant energy, responding to their presence with a soft illumination that grew stronger as they approached. The Harmony Spear. Nera whispered the name coming to her mind unbidden, as if the knowledge had always been there waiting to be accessed. You know what this is? Daniel asked. Not consciously, but my staff does. Nera approached the pedestal, her ancestral weapon resonating with the spear. This chamber is a fusion of technologies, human ingenuity, and Alari psychic science combined into something greater than either alone. Daniel studied the inscriptions on the nearest wall, his expression growing increasingly astonished. According to this, human and Alari scientists created this weapon together during the first Kravak incursion. When it became clear that conventional weapons couldn't stop them, they developed something that targeted the Kravak hive consciousness without causing physical harm. A non-lethal weapon? Nera questioned. More than that, Daniel continued moving around the chamber to read more inscriptions. It disrupts the neural patterns that make the Kravak xenophobic and aggressive, temporarily rendering them docile and open to communication. It doesn't kill or control them. It creates an opportunity for peace. Why wasn't it used? Nera asked, circling the pedestal with growing excitement. Daniel's face fell as he read further. The weapon was completed too late. Before it could be deployed, the Kravak located this facility. The scientists sacrificed themselves, sealing the weapon away, with coordinates embedded in both human and Alari records, hoping future generations would find it if the Kravak ever returned. Nera placed her staff alongside the Harmony Spear, watching as energy flowed between them. Can it be removed? Will it still function after all this time? The inscriptions suggest it was designed to integrate with the starship's systems, Daniel replied, examining the pedestal more closely. And, yes, it was built to last indefinitely, powered by a self-sustaining energy source, based on principles I barely understand. With careful movements, they detached the spear from its resting place. The moment it was freed, the chamber's lights dimmed slightly, as if the facility had completed its primary purpose. The spear itself continued to glow with inner light, responding to Nera's touch with pulses of energy that seemed almost joyful. "We need to get this to New Terra immediately," Daniel said, checking the time display on his suit. "The Kravak fleet will reach the colony in less than 24 hours. They ascended quickly to the surface, the ancient facility sealing itself behind them, as if returning to its millennia-long slumber. Back aboard the Pathfinder, Daniel immediately set course for New Terra, while Nera worked to integrate the Harmony Spear with the ship's systems, as the inscriptions had suggested. The technical challenges were significant, but Nera found that her telepathic abilities combined with the staff's interface capabilities made the integration possible. The spear's crystalline components linked with the Pathfinder's power core, creating new energy pathways throughout the small vessel. Navigation systems, weapons arrays, and communication systems all showed enhanced function once the integration was complete. "It's done," Nera announced as Daniel guided them out of the veiled sectors, the gravitational anomalies seeming less severe on their return journey. "The spear is fully integrated. According to the data we've accessed, it should generate a pulse wave capable of affecting Kravak neural patterns at a range of several thousand kilometers. Enough to capture their entire fleet if we position ourselves correctly," Daniel noted, pushing the engines to maximum as they cleared the gravitational distortions. "We'll need to get past their outer defenses before activating it." They made the jump to hyperspace, the Pathfinder, performing beyond its design specifications, thanks to the spear's enhancements. The journey that should have taken 16 hours was completed in barely 11, bringing them to the outskirts of the New Terra system, with precious hours to spare. What they found there chilled their blood. The Kravak fleet had arrived early, 15 warships in attack formation, surrounding the small oceanic world that harbored humanity's last refuge. The battle had already begun, energy weapons lancing between the planet's orbital defenses and the invading ships. "We're too late," Daniel whispered, watching, as one of New Terra's defense stations exploded under concentrated fire. "Not yet," Nera countered, activating the ship's communication system. "This is Nera of the 7th House aboard the Pathfinder, with Outpost Guardian Daniel. Admiral Reeves, if you can hear us, please respond." The reply came amid bursts of static. "Pathfinder, this is Admiral Reeves. Your timing is impeccable if less than ideal. Please tell me you found something useful in that forsaken sector." "We found the Harmony Spear," Daniel responded. "An ancient weapon designed specifically to counter the Kravak. We need a clear path to the center of their fleet formation to deploy it." There was a pause before Admiral Reeves replied, her voice steadier than the situation warranted. "Understood. I'm diverting what remains of our defense fleet to create a corridor. Approach vector data transmitting now. You'll have one chance, make it count." The tactical display updated with the approach vector, a narrow path that would briefly open as New Terra's remaining ships launched a coordinated attack against one flank of the Kravak formation. It was a desperate plan that would cost many human lives to create their opening. "We'll be detected the moment we approach," Daniel warned. "The stealth systems won't hold against their focused scans." "They don't need to," Nera replied, taking her position at the newly configured control interface for the Harmony Spear. "We just need to get close enough." The New Terra defense fleet moved into position, concentrating their fire on a section of the Kravak line. Ships exploded on both sides as the human vessels sacrificed themselves to create the promised corridor. Daniel piloted the Pathfinder, with precision accelerating hard into the momentary gap. Kravak sensors detected them immediately. Weapon systems from multiple warships targeted their small vessel, the first salvos, narrowly missing, as Daniel executed evasive maneuvers that should have been impossible in a ship of the Pathfinder's class. "Harmony Spear charging," Nera announced, channeling her psychic energy through her staff and into the weapon's control matrix. 80%, 90. A glancing hit rocked the Pathfinder alarms blaring as shield systems struggled to compensate. Daniel fought to maintain their course, heading directly for the center of the Kravak formation, where the flagship loomed like a massive chitinous predator. "We're in range," he called, as they passed between two Kravak destroyers, so close that the details of their weapon emplacements were visible through the viewscreen. "Harmony Spear activating now," Nera announced, releasing the accumulated energy. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a wave of golden energy erupted from the Pathfinder, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. Where it touched the Kravak vessels, their weapon systems powered down immediately. Communication signals between the ships faltered and ceased. "It's working," Daniel breathed, watching as the coordinated attack pattern of the Kravak fleet dissolved into disarray. "They're disorganized, confused." Nera maintained her focus, channeling more energy into the spear. "The effect is temporary, minutes only. We need to establish communication before it fades." Daniel opened a channel to Admiral Reeves. "The weapon is deployed. The Kravak fleet is neutralized temporarily. Now is the time for contact." Admiral Reeves' response was immediate. "Broadcasting on all frequencies and in the Kravak language spectrum." A new voice joined the communication, dignified, authoritative, and unmistakably human despite its age. "This is Governor Mikhail of New Terra to the Kravak Hive Command. We activate the ancient protocols of non-aggression established at the Conclave of Harmony. You are experiencing the effects of the Harmony Spear, created by our ancestors, to end the cycle of violence between our species. We offer peace and dialogue in place of extinction." For several tense moments, there was no response. The golden energy field maintained its effect, holding the Kravak fleet in temporary neural realignment. Then a response came, the clicking, chittering language of the Kravak, translated through their communication systems. "We receive. We remember." Ancient memories surface. The Conclave existed, before the Great Forgetting, before the directive of purification. "We will listen." Hope surged through Nera's chest as she maintained the spear's field. It had worked exactly as designed, not controlling the Kravak, but freeing them temporarily from the neural patterns that drove their xenophobic aggression, allowing them to access memories their own leadership had suppressed for millennia. Over the next hours, as the Pathfinder docked with New Terra's main station, preliminary communications were established with the Kravak fleet. The Harmony Spear's effect had to be reapplied periodically, but each time it seemed to last longer, as if the Kravak neural patterns were remembering their original configuration. Nera stood beside Daniel on the observation deck of New Terra Station, looking out at the gathered fleet, human defense vessels and Kravak warships, maintaining a cautious distance from each other, but no longer exchanging fire. "It will be a long process," Admiral Reeves said, joining them at the viewport. She was older than Nera had imagined from her voice, silver-haired and battle-scarred, but with eyes that held both wisdom and compassion. "The Kravak Hive consciousness has been conditioned toward xenophobia for generations. Even with the spear's effect, permanent change will require time and patience." "But it's possible," Daniel said, his shoulder brushing against Nera's, in what felt like a deliberate gesture of connection. "More than possible," Governor Mikhail added, as he approached his formal attire, marking him as the colony's civilian leader. "Necessary if any of us are to survive. The data you recovered from the ancient facility suggests that the Kravak were themselves victims genetically modified by a species long extinct to serve as perfect soldiers, then abandoned when their creators perished." Nera's mind reeled with this revelation. "Then all this time they've been acting on programming they couldn't control." "Programming that the Harmony Spear disrupts," Admiral Reeves confirmed. "Our ancestors were wiser than we knew. They understood that ending the cycle required healing, not destruction." As the leaders departed to prepare for formal negotiations, Nera and Daniel remained at the viewport, watching the stars beyond the gathered fleets. New Terra itself was visible below a blue-green jewel that bore remarkable similarity to the ancient images of original Earth that Daniel had shown her during their journey. "What happens now?" Nera asked quietly. "My people are gone. I have nowhere to return to." Daniel turned to face her, his expression serious, yet filled with something she had begun to recognize as affection. "Stay," he said simply. New Terra was founded on the principle that humanity needed to change, to become something better than what we were before the first exile. Your presence here, your knowledge and perspective, could help shape that future. As the last Aluri Nera asked. "As yourself," Daniel corrected. "Last of your kind, yes, but also first of something new. The facility we found proves that humans and Aluri were connected once. Perhaps that connection was meant to be restored." Nera felt the warmth of his words reach past the grief that had been her constant companion since watching her world burn. The Harmony Spear hadn't just offered hope for peace with the Kravak, it had given her a glimpse of a future she hadn't dared imagine. "I'll stay," she decided, her hand finding his. "There's much to rebuild and many worlds to warn about the changes coming. The galaxy believed both our races extinct. Imagine their surprise when we return together." Daniel's smile matched her own as they looked out at the stars. Beyond the gathered fleets, beyond New Terra itself, countless worlds awaited rediscovery. Some might hold other survivors, human outposts, or Aluri enclaves that had escaped the Kravak purges. Even if they were truly the last of their kinds, they carried within them the seeds of renewal. "Together then," Daniel said, his fingers intertwining with hers. "A new beginning." As New Terra completed another rotation beneath them, twin suns broke over its curved horizon, bathing them in golden light, remarkably similar to the desert dawn where Nera's journey had begun. What had started in desperation and isolation had transformed into purpose and connection, proof that, even in the ashes of extinction, hope could take root and flourish. The Harmony Spear pulsed gently from its new housing in the station's central core. Its golden light, a promise that the cycle of destruction could be broken, that understanding could triumph over fear, and that two souls from supposedly extinct races could forge a future neither could have imagined alone.